Thank you very much for being with us this morning. It was kind of interesting a few months ago when the team asked if I would do a presentation, and I love to do this. I love to talk, and in fact, I sometimes get in trouble because I talk too much. But anyway, this morning, I want to share with you some things that I believe will be very, very valuable to you in developing a customer service culture within your organization. And whether you're in a leadership position over a lot of people, or whether you're just specifically responsible for yourself and your customers, I think that we can have some valuable interaction. And you'll note that we will spend a lot of time talking together as opposed to me just speaking. I'm going to first share with you a great customer service story. Last night I visited with an old friend in the parking lot, and he's a good neighboring business, Fars Jewelry. And I think he's 78? 80. He's 80 years old, still works every day. 40 years ago this month, I walked into the second floor of Fars Jewelry, which was down between 24th and 25th. He had to go upstairs to it, and he had a little showroom up there, and bought my wife's wedding ring from Fars. And today he's still providing that same kind of service. He says, Dave, now quickly, he says, Dave, how did you find out about me? And I said, it was word of mouth. All my friends said that's the place to go to get a diamond, because he's fair, he'll take care of you. But that same kind of customer service culture is in his organization today. And you walk in the store, you get greeted, you have people give you attention, and they care about you because of the feel that you get in the store. And as I was visiting about business, I said, how's your business? He says, we actually had an increase last year. And I said, what was the proportion of business? And he says, that's the key. He said, we lost some in jewelry, but we picked it up in electronics and home entertainment. Now, what's the problem with picking it up in home entertainment and losing it in jewelry? Smaller margins. So they didn't end up with as much profit, but they kept the business. And so, again, that's the customer service idea. Now I'm going to tell you a couple of difficult ones, and one took place just a week or so ago. I walked into a store, and I'm not going to identify, but it's not too hard because there's only 2 or 3 of them in our community, that sells things for home improvement and also patio furniture. My wife and I were interested in buying some patio furniture for her mother for her birthday, and so and the whole family was going in on it, and we were spending some of her money too. But anyway, we walked into the store, over to the patio furniture area, which this time of year it's full of merchandise. When it's actually summer, there isn't any merchandise there. But anyway, it was full. We walked over, we identified the stuff that we wanted, and waited and looked for somebody in a blue shirt, and we couldn't find them. And so I walked over to customer service, and I said, gee, we're over in the patio area, and we want to buy some furniture. Can you get somebody? So they made a couple of attempts at getting somebody over there, and about 20 minutes later I go back over and ask them for help again. Another 15 minutes, nobody came to help us, so we took the information off from one of the tags for the website, and we went home and looked at the website, identified all the pieces that we wanted to have, and but there were no groupings. So in the store there were groupings by price. So about an hour later I finally called back to the store and asked for somebody from that department. And by this time the department manager was there, and I got a hold of her. Went through and told her the scenario, and of course she was embarrassed because we were willing to spend between $2,500 and $3,000 in that store. Now that was more business than they probably did in the first 3 hours. And they missed that opportunity. And so I explained what happened and told her, I still want to buy it. It's exactly what my mother-in-law wants. And so I gave her the order, and she says, well, they don't come by groups. I said, go to the department. You've got it priced by groups. Anyway, bottom line, we bought it by groups. And I said, now, we want it delivered, and we want it assembled. And so she finally gave me the assembly free, and I paid about $80 for the delivery. Now, that was the bad part of the story, because it was a real tough thing. But they did follow through, and we got the merchandise the morning of her birthday, and it was there, and they delivered it, and so on. It was really good, and it's great merchandise. But the problem is that could have been taken care of in the first 10 minutes we walked in the store. They would have had the order, and there wouldn't have been a hassle with delivery and shifting me back and forth. There were a few other issues in the meantime, and getting them to stop long enough to listen that I wanted on 6-month interest-free and all those kinds of things. But I share that with you because those things happen every day. And with the other organization in the community that does the same thing, I faced the same problem in trying to buy some furniture for my daughter's home, her patio furniture last year, because it came to the home and the pillows didn't match on the cushions didn't match on the chairs. Some of them had one color and some had another color. And do you think we could get them to actually get the same color cushions on all 6 pieces? Not a chance. And anyway, so I share that because that's the rough part of our business. Every single person in your organization that has any communication with any customer or potential customer is dealing with customer service. The other thing that's really critical today is the indirect customer service that you face. When I call an organization like I did 2 Saturdays ago and try to get service, who actually answers the phone? What's that? Most of the time it's recording. And where's that? If I do get somebody to talk to, where are they? Someplace. We don't know. In fact, yesterday I was making a phone call on a medical issue, and where it actually took place was in Southern California, and I found out that I was talking to somebody in Cincinnati, and she didn't have any idea what that hospital was like in Southern California, nor what the services were provided. And so it was just really interesting to see that. Now, those kind of processes are really vital in creating that customer service culture and the customer service impression. Many of you remember ZCMI, and for 30 years I was with ZCMI and managed the store here in Ogden for 10 years. But one of the unique things that we had at ZCMI was a phone system that if I wanted to call Richard, I knew his extension in the store, and maybe he was in men's suits. I would pick up the phone, dial his extension, he would answer the phone. When ZCMI merged with May Company in 1999, one of the first things they told us they were going to do is give us this really neat hoop-de-doo phone system. I thought, okay. And so within a few weeks, we were inundated with customer complaints when they could actually find me through the phone system. But many of them stomped into my office. Now, at the time, I was managing the Salt Lake downtown store. And they stomped into my office and complained that they could not get their sales associate, their friend that knew them. That all they got was a recording and then shifted from one place to the other and finally actually got to the store but couldn't get anybody to tell them where they were. That was destructive to our customer service. ZCMI was always, you'd go to a wedding and what color papered boxes did you see? They were white chrome coat. ZCMI owned the wedding registry business because my wife could call the wedding registry department in any one of the stores and talk to somebody that she knew, and she says, I've got 4 weddings this month, and here's the names. She'd pull them up. How much do you want to spend? I want to spend $20 on this one, $25 on this one, whatever it might be, and they would find an item, gift wrap it, charge it to our account, deliver it to the bride's home within a day before the wedding. Easy. That went out the window. When May Company came and analyzed our figures, they couldn't believe how much tabletop business we were doing. We were doing more Yadro business, and for most ladies, you know who Yadro is. It's the finest porcelain manufacturer in the world. We were doing more Yadro business in the downtown ZCMI store than all of the May Company stores in the Northwest put together. They couldn't figure it out. I said, why? Because we were doing some unique things. One of those things was we had parties about twice a year, and we'd invite somebody, and sometimes even a member of the Yadro family, to come from Spain and be in our stores. And we would sell merchandise 3 months ahead of time, and they could bring that merchandise in or leave it in the store, come in, and that member of the Yadro family or that person that was actually a sculptor would sign the bottom of their piece of Yadro. Now, what did that do to the value? It triples the value. Okay? Didn't cost them anything. But these are some customer service things that we did. Missionary business. We did more missionary business than anybody in the world. We sold more two-pant suits. And when May Company came, they said, we said, this is an important part of our business. And they said, oh yeah, we understand that. We're going to continue to have you have two-pant suits. We said, okay, it's very important we have a discount on that because everyone else has it. They said, okay, all right, finally. And it took them 2 months to make that decision. And then we said, but we have to have free alterations. Now, you get a skinny kid with big shoulders and you have lots of alterations. Well, anyway, they said, no. It works in every other store in the United States. It's got to work here. I said, no, it's not going to. Our competitors don't do it. I said, I don't care if you raise the price on the suits. You've got to give free alterations. In 6 months, in just my store, we'd lost $200,000 in business. $200,000 in just two-pant business. Now, I share that with you because these are indirect customer service issues. In the banking business, surcharges and processes can cause customer consternation. Is that right? Is that right with you guys? All right. Those are issues that you have to find. Also, the idea of access to the individual branch is a critical part. I think that it's really critically important to understand what our customers have as needs. Because even in your own family, you recognize that there are so many differences and the expectations are different. And so by helping them to share with us what their needs are, we can then satisfy those needs. We cannot expect them to be one size fits all. And so I think as we talk through this today, that's one of the things that's a hallmark, is to remember that each individual is different and they have different needs, wants, and personalities. And so it's important. Richard and I have been friends for almost 40 years, but the reality is we're totally different guys. He has less hair than I do, and, and he's also smarter than I am. But that's the important thing in really understanding customer service. Let's have somebody over here. What's customer service?
Being an advocate for the customer.
An advocate for the customer. What does that mean? What does advocacy mean?
Advocacy of supporting the needs of the customer.
Okay, great. I'm going to share something, and this is a little bit different kind of customer service relating to this advocacy idea. If I'm a new business coming into Ogden or Weber County, or a current business wanting to change my location or do something different, I go to the city, Ogden City. I'm going to pick on them today. We've got 15 cities in our community, but I'm going to pick on Ogden right now. Nobody's here from Ogden, is there? That's okay. I go into that office, and if you come in with a business plan and with information about what you want to do, and the first thing they ask is, this isn't going to work, or that's the wrong zoning, as opposed to, let's see what you want to do, and we'll see how we can make it work. Does that change the advocacy attitude? From the idea of picking things apart and saying what's wrong with it, to the idea, let's see what you have and see how we can make it work for you. So then that feeling of advocacy is a critical part of making that work. And that's all people want. All right, we're going to shift, and I'm going to ask you the same kind of question, but who is your customer? Sue?
My boss.
Your boss. Okay, now is that an internal customer or an external customer? Internal customer. Who else do you have as internal customers?
All of my coworkers.
Okay, everybody that works together as a team is your internal customer. Who's your external customers?
All of the people we do contracts with.
Okay, now, how many of you know who Enable is? Most of you. You're a popular lady. Okay, all right, Sue. Who else do you have as customers?
We have people who are disabled and their families.
Okay. Now, this is very, and I pick on Sue because this is very unique. Okay, so she has the customers that are actually those that are disabled, that work at Enable, and that they help place in the real world, right? They also have customers that are the businesses they're trying to place them at. They have another set of customers that are the actual contracts that they get, that they actually produce merchandise and do services for. So think of all the different customers that Enable Industry has. Anybody here familiar with the Ogden Weber Applied Technology College? Okay, Janet, who is the customer for the Applied Technology College?
Wow, just about anybody.
Okay. A little more specific. Somebody help you what?
School districts, the schools, the students, the
Okay. Those are all customers.
business owners, because they want the trained people to, they're kind of a partner in that. Thanks, that's a good word.
No, it is. And they have, again, much the same as Sue had over here. ATC has a lot of different customers. Now, what do they call their students? They don't call their students their customers. In our definition today it is, but in their definition, what is their students? Their product. They call the students their product because they're producing a product that they sell to the businesses. Okay? And they use as a resource the school districts to help get students into, even when they're still in high school. So different organizations have different customers. Let's pick on the lone Zions Bank guy. Okay, who's your customer? Who's the bank's customer?
Anybody that's ever had anything to do with money.
Okay. All right. That's pretty broad. Anybody not have to do anything with money?
Everybody here is my customer.
All right. And either your current customer or potential customer. Okay, let's identify some of those. Because as we listen to the different positions in the key bank group over here, we had commercial banking, which is
banking companies in town.
the companies that they do business with, businesses, okay? And we had some branch managers, and your primary customer is?
Our customers currently.
Anybody that walks through the door, or potential walks through the door, okay? So there's a lot of different customers that we deal with. And I'm going to talk just a minute about the internal customer for a moment. This is one that's forgotten often. This is the person that you work with every day. And if you don't treat them well, you don't have a relationship. And guess where it shows? With what? Yeah, it exposes. You know, when somebody comes into your home, a friend or something, and one of your children have just acted up, do they know it? There's a feeling, an atmosphere there. I walked into my daughter's home in Salt Lake a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, it took about 3 seconds for my wife and I to recognize there was something wrong. And her 6-year-old had had a bad day, and poor old Thane had just had a rough day at school, and he came home and bouncing off the walls, and she'd had about 7 hours straight of it, and at the time he was in his room. Now, you know, it didn't take us any time at all to figure that out. The same kind of feeling exists when somebody walks into your business, or you pick up the phone after you've had a disagreement or a frustration, and it reflects directly on the outside. Now, the most important question today: who is responsible for customer service? Me. Thank you. Is there anyone in your organization that is not responsible? Where does it start? It starts with leadership, and it starts with me, because even, you know, even one person in an organization that has a desire to change things can make a difference. But the most important difference is that the culture of an organization starts at the top. And if the president or manager or CEO or whatever that position is, or business owner, Richard is responsible for customer service at Ogden Blue. He has no one else to go to, except his wife. But the reality is the buck stops with Richard. Now, how do we as leaders, and everyone here is a leader, but how do we as leaders create a customer service culture? First, let's define what culture is. Somebody help us? What's the culture in your contracting organization? In other words, how do you interact together? What kind of an attitude do you have? I'm going to share a story. I don't know how many of you remember Kevin Sullivan. General Kevin Sullivan was the commander at Hill Air Force Base until about 1.5 years ago. Anybody remember him? Did he interaction with him? Sharon, what was he like? He was a great guy. One of my first times to get to know Kevin, and I say Kevin because when we were away from the formal situation, it was always first name. And he and his team invited me to go golfing with them one afternoon, and this was a group of suppliers for Hill Air Force Base and the officers and commanders of the different wings at Hill. And he chose to invite me to actually sit in a golf cart with him, and I was a little nervous, you know. I hadn't been too acquainted with generals before. But anyway, we had a great time golfing. And as we were coming back to the clubhouse, he said, "Dave, I'm going to apologize. My wife, June, is involved in an event that she's partly responsible for. I'm going to be leaving right away. I'm not going to stay for the luncheon and visit with everybody, and because I'm going to go support her." Now, what did that say? What did that say?
That's where the real boss was.
All right. But it also said, here the general is saying, "I support my wife." That said something about him. Now, here was the second part of it. We went to this little social thing. He stepped in for a minute, said, "I apologize that I've got to leave. I can't stay with you. I'm going to go support June." And they all knew June. I mean, here are all these officers from the base, and they knew June. And then, after he left, to listen to how they talked about Kevin when he was not there. The respect and love. And I use that word love, and it's not used in business very often. The love that they had for him, because he had earned their respect. The next morning I called Kevin, and I said, "I just want to tell you something, an observation from an old guy who loves leadership and organizational behavior. You own those people because you have earned their respect and love. Not because he's a 3-star general, but because he's Kevin Sullivan." And I saw that for 2 years that I worked with him. That same kind of an attitude permeated his entire group. And I'm going to share something that's down in the program a little bit, but I think it's important because it's part of this. He empowered and enabled every single person on the base. Now, and I'm going to ask the person who should know. Sue, what's the definition of enable?
Well, it's to create the ability in another.
Okay. Do we empower them? It's part of that idea of empowerment. So we give them the authority, we help make them independent and able to stand on their own. That's the whole principle behind Enable Industries. But the whole concept here is you want to empower every associate that works with you. What does that do? Does it create chaos?
Sometimes it can.
Okay. When does it create chaos?
I think initially it would create some chaos until they know exactly what, you mean I really have the power to do this? You know, sometimes when you give people freedom and the power to do things, it's kind of unnerving.
For management especially, and for the individual. Yeah, because...
Whoa, you mean I can really do this? And he's going,
but over time, what happens?
they become empowered. They become good at what they're doing. They become respectful of the person that gave them that power. I think they respect themselves.
They want to do the best they can do. Now, Kevin was very unique in the military. And to talk to those that were actually in his staff brought out that I was right in my original assessment. Because what they said is that he gave them assignments and he followed through and had them report back. But he was not there checking on them every minute. Years and years ago, when I first started at ZCMI, we had a manager, and he was unique. We would be working and doing our thing, and you'd kind of feel like there were eyes on you, and you'd turn around and he'd be standing behind a column in the store watching you. Now, does that give you real confidence to move forward? Not exactly. And I had somebody on the opposite side. I was an operations manager in which at the time was the largest volume store in the company. And the operations manager does everything that the store manager doesn't want to do. And, and he was one. After I'd been there for a while, and I'd been at the store in another position earlier, but I knew his personality. And he did not like to be out on the floor, engaged in what was going on. We would actually move departments and see how long it took him to figure out it was moved. And one day I was walking through and he says, something feels a little different here. What happened? And I said, well, that department was over there last week. And he didn't even understand that we had moved it and why we had moved it. And so there's opposite kinds of things that you can have. But what we really want to do is think about how you empower people. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. Let's talk about how to create a customer service culture. So I brought that up, and it's that everybody in the organization feels, understands, and does things in the same way so that you have the confidence that you need to be able to empower people. They have a positive expectation on what happens. And here's the process that I would suggest to you. Number one, you pick in your organization some of the strongest people you have, maybe 2 or 3 of the very strongest people you have in the organization that already have a customer service mentality. It's part of their culture, their personal being. Whatever they do, it's just that way. And Sharon McFarland is one of those people. I hired her, how many years ago, Sharon? 20. And I actually hired her away from the Chamber of Commerce. And she was hired for a Christmas deal. She was supposed to be our corporate gift partner. So she went out and looked for businesses to bring in, sell them things that they were going to give away to their customers or their employees. She did so well that we put her in as a department manager as soon as she was through with Christmas. But I didn't have to teach her anything. She taught me things. And so that's the kind of people you want on that committee. But on the other side, we also want to have some naysayers on there. Now, what's a naysayer?
Oh, naysayer?
It's an antagonist.
Yeah, right, that would be good.
An antagonist. Somebody that's always bouncing off the walls because they don't want to do it the way you say to do it. It's trying to create their own procedure in a banking organization. What does that do? And so you want some balance in that. And you sit them down and you say, all right, we're going to create some customer service expectations in our organization. And you start talking through. You get them to share what needs to be done, how you do it. What are those principles? And you work through it for 2-3 hours, whatever it takes, till you get down to about 5 to 7 principles that you put on a whiteboard. And you say, all right, I want you to study these, and I want to make sure these are exactly what you want. And then you publish them. Our customer service committee created these principles. And they're simple, and I bet you that they're going to come out about 75% the same for every organization that's in here, if you do it. Now, they'll be a little different because of the different customers you serve, but the basic principles are going to be there. How we treat the customer, how we answer the phone, all these kinds of things that we do. I did this in one of the first stores that I managed. It was up in Cache Valley. And the company had a lot of customer service things, but I wanted to do something that would be really unique because we were a long ways away from corporate and we never got to see them. But anyway, we created this. And this team, I said, now you guys are in charge of going out to the store after we'll have a meeting, breakfast, roll it all out. You're going to introduce this. Then you're going to go around the store and visually see if people are doing it. Not check up on it, but verify that they're doing what they're doing. Not hide behind the post, but be right there in the open. You're their friend. You're their coach. And we're going to give you some money. We're going to give you a pocket full of $1 bills and keep them separate from your own. And what we want you to do is when you see somebody doing one of these things on our list, you walk up after they've finished with their customer and hand them a $1 bill. Not a big thing, just hand them a $1 bill. Say, thank you. What's that?
I remember seeing you do that at the store.
Thank you.
You went around with dollar bills.
Yeah. And all it took was these people doing it. Now, did the people in the store recognize who was the customer service committee? You bet. They became their friends. Then in 6 months, guess what we did? We put another group in there. Same principles. We would ask them for their input, and then they became the support. Well, before long, you know, every department in the store, and at the time we had about 150 associates in that store. But when I was in the Salt Lake store, we had 1,000. And so you really have to have a pretty exercised team to get out there and make it happen. But the idea of creating that type of groundswell, you can push from the top down forever, and they push back. But if you get them engaged and create an atmosphere, they are there. They're part of it. It's part of them. And you ask for feedback. And then one of the things that's really fun is after a period of time, you deputize anybody in the store that comes up and watches or observes a good behavior, and you nominate somebody that is recognized for a whole month. And maybe they get to go out to dinner with their wife or sweetheart or whatever. Or you give them, one of the things we used to do if it was a big thing is we'd give them a day off with pay. An extra day off. They'll kill for that. And especially if it's a student at the university. I mean, you know, to get a day off from work, they can take a day off from school and ski, you know. But the whole idea is you look for things that are almost in kind. They're not expensive. And then we used to do for managers, if they really did a great job, we used to give them a 3-day weekend, paid 3-day weekend, and send them to a resort, you know, Park City or someplace for a weekend. Now it cost us maybe $50 for a hotel, but think about that. You know, all of a sudden you're looking at positive things that relate. You're emphasizing. Now, here's one thing that I want you to write down and want you to understand. By the way, I've got some notes for you if you want when we're through here. Behavior that gets attention gets repeated. Now, I studied psychology, and it was enjoyable, but when I got all through, I found out that there was 1,000 ways to do things, and none of them were proven to be exactly right. But I picked up on this one thing that really does. This is behavior psychology. Behavior that gets attention gets repeated. Now, what happens when my little grandson Thane was acting up? Did he get his mom's attention? You bet. Did he repeat that behavior? You bet. Okay? And so what we have to do is think about in our organization how we emphasize and give attention to good behavior, to the desired behavior, and de-emphasize the negative behavior. We always recognize around other people. In other words, if I recognized you because you did something good and I told everybody that you did a great job, that would have a great impact on you. But when I'm disciplining, we always discipline in private with one other person there. Okay? And we discipline very carefully and help them understand the behavior that we want. Spend a little time on what they're doing wrong and a lot of time on what we have as an expectation. And you write it out for them. And you give them specific expectations and a time frame to deal with it. That's appropriate discipline. But what we really want to focus our attention on is good things. We used to do, at least once a year in the stores, we would do a cleanup week. And we would give them a checklist of all the things they had to do in their department and to make it perfect. And I remember going to a camera department. You guys will relate to this. Camera department. And this guy had done an impeccably good job. And he was ranked about 95%. And when we got all done, I think he actually got second prize in the whole store. And he came up to me and he said, "You know what? All you did was tell me the 2 things I did wrong, instead of the 95 things I did right." I remembered that because here he was doing almost everything right and got second out of, I think there was 150 departments. And his impression was, I picked at the dust. And the same thing is true. If they're making an effort, if they're moving in the right direction, you know, if your son leaves his socks on the floor and his underwear on the floor, if he picks his socks up and leaves the underwear, you focus on picking the socks up. You don't focus on he missed the underwear. And so you focus on the idea, gee, your hair's on this morning. And instead of saying, gee, it's ugly, or you didn't comb it, you didn't take a shower. But it's natural for us to do that. So it really is a concerted effort to create this culture where you're recognizing good behavior and you're somewhat ignoring less favorable behavior. I promise you it'll work. If you take nothing away today but that principle permeating your organization, I promise you, you can see some change in this culture because they will want to be doing the things that are right. Now I'm going to share another kind of an interesting principle. Thinly disguised contempt for the customer. Now think about that. Thinly disguised contempt for the customer. What would that be?
You've got a smile on your face, but you're not thinking that.
Okay, it's the guy that shakes your hand while he's kicking you in the shins, I had an associate, or a manager actually once, that worked for me, and she kept an incredibly good department. It was the lingerie and foundation department. And this is when actually you had coverage. But anyway, she did a great job of merchandising. She had a great relationship with our buying division. And things were just handled very well. But I found that she cycled through associates in the department. In other words, they didn't want to work for her. And I had a fairly significant number of customer complaints from her department. And most of those customer complaints were specifically involved in a return. So I brought her in and I said, tell me, what do you think about this? I said, we have a lot of return issues from your department. What's the situation? And after about 30 minutes of visiting with her and having her share her feelings, she had an attitude that every time she took something back, it was like taking a finger and giving it to somebody. It was like taking a piece of herself and giving it away. I thought to myself, why does she have that? Because we had, and I'm going to talk about returns in just a minute, but she had an attitude that it was really just like it was taking her own child away every time she had to take a return. And I worked with her for almost a year to try to get that, and it just continued to come back because she had kind of a contempt for the customers. They were not her friend, they were her adversary. And so finally she left. She came back about 2 years later and said, I'd like a job. I said, great. She said, I got it. I said, what do you mean? She says, I really understand now the customer's my friend. And when I take a return back, that means they're going to come back. I've bought a customer. So let's talk a little bit about that kind of an attitude. And it can be with sales as well as it can be the other. If they don't really care about their customers and want them to succeed, they're going to be very unsuccessful because they don't get in their customers' hearts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the real estate industry that I spent some time in. I recruited and trained agents for an organization that I managed, and we had most of the time 50 to 60 agents. And the difference in anybody here had real estate experience? The unique thing about the real estate business is that they can be attached to a brokerage, but they are an independent contractor. And just ask the building guys, they know what independent contractors, how independent they can be. But these guys, they did their own thing, and ladies too. They were not a regular employee. And so it was like herding sheep. It was just really frustrating. So the idea of training them and having a standard that they had to live by because they thought they were independent was really, really difficult. And this same process I used with them in creating a culture by getting them to be in charge. And I rotated who did presentations at the training meetings on a weekly basis and so on. But many of them had kind of almost an arrogance about how they worked with their clients. And it was like they wanted to pick and choose their clients, which ones were good and which ones weren't. And yet they all could turn out to be, now it's granted, when somebody doesn't qualify, you tell them they don't qualify, and this is what you need to do to get qualified, and then I'll call you back in 6 months. But the reality is that they would pick and choose even among the good clients, mentally. And they would turn them off, and they didn't understand why the client wouldn't come back and why somebody else got that sale instead of them. There was one guy that came in my office and he said, Dave, I've just lost 3 transactions within a week of closing. Now we're talking about commission of about $7,000 to $10,000 a piece, so he had lost $30,000 in commission in a matter of 2 weeks. And so I went back to him and I said, what's going on here? And he was just almost in tears because he had lost these transactions. We went back and analyzed. One of them is he was representing the seller, and the buyer's agent had not been paying attention and did not get the lending taken care of. And so it fell through at the last minute. I said, that's your responsibility. He says, no, it can't be my responsibility. I'm responsible for my agent. I said, you're responsible for every single thing that touches that transaction. And if you don't understand that and internalize it, you'll miss a lot of other sales. You pay attention to who the lender is. You track what's going on. You make phone calls and make sure that the lender and the title company are all in sync, and that the paperwork's going to get there exactly when it has to get there. And I promise you that if you'll do that, you won't lose any more sales. And he never did get it because he really didn't understand the accountability for the customer. So that kind of moves us into the next situation. If I'm accountable for my customer from top to bottom, from the moment they walk in until they're totally happy, long term, it makes a huge difference. In the real estate business, it's repeat business. Now, how often do we buy homes? Right now, not very often. But reality is most people turn their homes from 5 to 7 years. And so the majority of the market turn about that fast. So that means that I'm going to get a customer down the road. For bankers, how often do people turn their lending? More often than that. Okay? And in today's economy, that's, helpful. But we also have some issues there. We won't get into that. But the idea of keeping track of these customers and working with them from year to year, because not only are they going to be buying a home again, even if it's a rental or if it's an investment, but they also have a sphere of influence, a group of friends, and they are also going to be buying homes. And so by utilizing this sphere of influence and your customers, present and past and future, you work in a network. And of course, this is all about the chamber, is the networking idea, is helping others help their business. 4 years ago, we started out with one contacts committee in the chamber. And they were a straggly group, and they met different places every 2 weeks. And I started going to those meetings and found out, there's just nothing happening here. So I talked to the one that was the chair and then the person that was supposed to become the chair. We visited with them. I invited them to come to the chamber every time they have their meeting and to consistently use different restaurants to supply the food for them. Well, anyway, and then we talked about creating this sphere of influence and creating partnerships. And within a very short period of time, it was Tammy Baugh that was the chair. She did a fantastic job of pulling them all together and helping them to understand this principle of working together, creating real relationships in business. And within 6 to 8 months, we were adding another contacts committee. And then we added another contacts committee. We now have 3 full, and most of them have 30 or more members that come consistently. And we're thinking about some specialty contacts committees. Why? Because they're learning how to treat their customers. And there's a difference between saying, I know a guy, I'm a real estate guy, and I say, I know a guy that can do your real estate lending for you. He'll take care of your mortgage. His name's John, and here's his phone number. And of course in real estate you have to give them at least 3, so they have a choice. But anyway, and that's one way. But is that a real referral? No, a real referral is, here are 3 individuals that I think are all qualified to do you a good job in lending. and tell them a little bit about the three. Which one do you think would be the best one for you? And they say, well, let's try this one. I said, okay, great. You pick up the phone and you call the lender and you set up an appointment and you ask the client, is it okay if I join you? You go into the lender, you sit down with him, and you listen to what their issues are with their credit rating. And because you're there, it's okay to hear that. But the lender can't share that with you. Is that right? They can't share that with me, but if I'm invited in, I can listen to it. So now I can work directly with the lender and make sure that that gets done. Now, is that a real referral? You bet it is, because I have a vested interest in that client just as you do. And that's the kind of relationship that we want you to build with your customers. Now, we talked originally about who's my customers and who are my partners, because businesses that you relate with are your customers and your partners. Okay, a real estate agent has a number of partners. One is the broker. Two, it's the lender. Three, it's the title company. And then, of course, their clients that they bring in and work with all three of those. And if you orchestrate that relationship between those individuals, you can win. Because when you get to the closing table, that is the funnest part of being an agent. You sit across this table and either they're closing their home because they sold it or they're closing their home because they bought it. And it's happy either way. Even if they didn't get as much out of their home or they paid a little more than they wanted to, they got what they want. And it's, by the way, one of the best free enterprise examples in the world. Because a buyer and a seller negotiate to where they get the price for what they want. It's free market. And it's gratifying. Now, the same gratification comes when you finish a loan, when you help a client figure out a financial plan. Right now, we've got a lot of businesses, and some of them call me, and they say, gee, I'm in trouble. I've got a shortfall. I can't make my cash flow work, and I need a bridge loan. Now, they don't know the term bridge loan. What's a bridge loan? Temporary loan to get them through some tough times, okay? And what does it do to an SBA loan if you use a bridge loan?
What does it do to the SBA?
Yeah, to their Small Business Association loan, their SBA loan. Does it hurt their SBA loan? No, it doesn't. But the clients often think that it's going to mess up their SBA loan, okay? And so they have a fear to even go see a lender. So one of my things I love to do is to send them to somebody I know and that specialize in SBA loans that can help them with a bridge loan, and they can get back up on their feet and move forward. Again, it's enabling them, it's helping them to move forward. Anyway, questions in this area? Okay, let's go on to solving issues. A few weeks ago, I was working on my daughter's car. She was having some trouble with it, and I had my head down in the engine, and my little grandson, this same Thane, 6-year-old, he's an interesting dude, came into the garage and he said, Grandpa, I understand Beck's car's got some issues. Now, I don't know, when I was 6 years old, I didn't know what the word issues meant. But today, it's an issue. It's not a problem, it's an issue. And so we want to help our associates be able to deal with that. How many of you love a phone call from a customer or a client and they have a problem? Now, why do you love it? I'm not being facetious.
I know, because I've learned how to solve that issue and make a more loyal customer out of them. And then I feel like I can ask for more products and more for the bank.
Okay. That was extremely well said. You create a relationship by helping them through a problem. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's an associate that created that problem or whether it was just something in their own works. It doesn't matter. You help them solve their issues. And because of that, they have more loyalty to you. And you said you had the confidence to go ask them for more to take more product on. Okay? An awesome principle. Now, where do we want the issues solved? In the manager's office? Where do we want them solved? Who said that? Where do we want it solved? The lowest position, in other words, the contact with the customer. the associate that's working with the customer. And in your case, it doesn't matter if they're out in the field coaching or helping one of your disabled individuals, or whether it's taking a phone call. We want that person, it goes back to the enabling that we talked about and empowering them. We want them to solve the problem. Why? What?
Less red tape. Talking about less red tape.
Yes, less red tape.
Back to empowering, if that customer feels like it's solved the first time without having to step up, there's no frustration. They feel, in fact, it turns it into a more positive experience.
It does, yeah. And who are they loyal to then? The associate. Do you want everybody in your office? No. It's much better if everyone in the team takes a piece of that. And so by giving them the empowerment and the authority to take care of situations, it's amazing what can take place. Because they feel better, they're stronger as an associate. And you don't have to get it. One of the things that I used to, especially when I was in the retail business, is to help the associates to be able to do that. But the second thing is that there's always somebody who loves to come to the manager or the president or the king or whoever it might be, because they think they're going to get more. And I shared with them, if you feel that there's an issue that might go further, pick up the phone, call me, or step in my office, but get there quickly. And I would often get a phone call. Dave, somebody's going to come to your office. And this is what happened. This is what I did, and I'm sorry. And it may be the best sales associate in the store, and whether it's a bad day or whatever. But they recognize that something went wrong in that transaction. And whether it's a return or whether it's a problem with a piece of merchandise, it doesn't really matter. There was an issue. But they came and they shared with me their feelings. Now, when the customer walked in my door, my strategy was exactly what you talked about, is I wanted them to walk out a friend. So the first thing I did was to diffuse them. Now, what do you do if you've got a 3-year-old in the back seat of the car screaming? Yell back? What's the easiest way to get them taken care of? What? Give them candy. That's the exact answer. You give them candy. Why? Now, what does it do?
They're going to shut up and you're going to be happy.
It diverts their attention. And they don't even remember why they're mad, why they're crying. So it gives them the opportunity to divert their attention. Somebody walks in my office and their last name's Bingham. Okay, think quickly. Who do I know that's Bingham? Are you related to John Bingham? Well, no. What family is he from? So they talk about that, all right? Or you mention something about their child that's with them. Or anything to divert their attention for about 2 seconds. And what happens when you divert their attention? Their anger goes down. And when the anger goes down, then you can talk to them as a person instead of them bouncing off the walls. Anyway, whatever, and you can create some techniques, and they shouldn't be superficial, they should be sincere to asking about that person. And then you ask them to share what happened. And shut up. Listen. And you give some verbal feedback, and you may ask some clarifying questions. How did you feel about that? Now, what really happened there? Those kinds of things to just make sure that they know you're listening to them and to get clarification for you. Once you've completed their opportunity to share what happened, then you ask the question they don't expect. What would you like me to do? And they just kind of sit there in silence for a second. Well, I'm not supposed to answer that. The reality is, if they answer it, usually they ask for less than if you offer something first. And sometimes what they offer will be, okay. And they say, well, gee, could I have asked for more? That's negotiating. But the reality is it's fun to listen to what they have to say. Now, sometimes it's going to be totally off the wall. There's no way to do it. But you know what their expectations are. Then you think clearly and say, okay, what can I do that's close to what they're asking? and what's reality. And you give them at least two choices. Here's some of the things we could do. I'll take the merchandise back, I'll shoot the sales associate, and I'll burn the store. Okay? But the reality is that no, you really don't do that. But what you do is you give them a choice of something we can do. I can take the merchandise back, I can have it repaired, or whatever you can do. And then you give them the opportunity to choose between at least two things. And they will make a choice. Or they will give you a compromise in between. And I share that because that's the same process you help your associates learn. Instead of combatant at the sales desk, at the customer service desk, on the telephone, or whatever it might be, you don't have the thinly disguised contempt and the combatant attitude. You have an attitude of fulfilling their needs. Why? Because you're building new business, right? We want to build new business. That customer, you resolve their issues. Notice that, resolve issues, not solve problems. Resolve issues, they will come back. You have developed a relationship with them. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your membership and your involvement with the Chamber. This is a fun thing. Our seminars in the last year have been overwhelmingly successful because of you. And many of you have been to more than one of them. I think we've got a number of you here that are for the first time this morning, and I hope I haven't sent you away. But the reality is we appreciate your support of the Chamber. We can get through this economic difficulty that we're in. And in fact, in the last few weeks, I've started feeling from the businesses that I visit a change. Maybe it's the weather, but there is a change. We have a 5.2% unemployment in Weber County. That means that 94.8% of the people in Weber County are employed. So we should be able to do 95% of our business, right? Not a 20% decrease, but a 5% decrease. We can live with that. We can make it work. But I promise you that the thing we talked about today will not only benefit you in the recovery, but will also make you successful long-term as an organization and as an individual. Because it's not just here. I used to teach salesmanship at a couple of colleges, and one of the things that I try to help the students understand was that every minute of your life you're selling. I don't care if you're a physician, you're selling yourself to your patient. If you're a guy, you're selling yourself to a girl. If you're a husband, you're selling yourself to your wife. It's a selling game. And customer service is a selling game. We're selling our organization and ourselves to somebody else. So thank you. Appreciate you being with us.